Welcome to KO Nation Boxing. Johnny Signorella here with Kevin Perry. We're going to talk about a lot of things that happened in 2020. We're going to break down Canelo versus Smith. Sit tight. Here we go. Let's rock. What's good, Kev? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Really excited to do a great show today and hopefully chat with some fans out there. Hopefully, some people heard about the show. It's kind of a little bit last minute, but definitely looking to talk about some great boxing. Great fight. I don't know if you would call it a great fight, but great performance by Canelo Alvarez over Callum Smith for the Ring Magazine 168-pound championship. Pretty amazing accomplishment, amazing feat for Canelo. What are your thoughts on that, John?
Well, things I take away from that fight, Kev, is that Canelo looked excellent against obviously a much taller opponent than himself. What I liked about Canelo was the jab, the body attack, and also the way he used great movement while fighting in the pocket. Let's talk about that real quick. Like, he stood in front of Smith the entire night and all that kind of stuff. He never enabled Smith to get in that fight. In my opinion, I pretty much had Canelo winning, Kev, every round.
Yeah, I think what I saw from the judges' scorecards, there was the 119-109 I thought was the most correct score in that bout. I thought Canelo however he did just completely exceeded overall my expectations. Obviously, he was just doing pretty much whatever he wanted to do, which really surprised me. I thought Smith was going to give more of a valiant effort. I thought he was going to I wouldn't say it wasn't that he didn't come to fight. I think early in the fight, Canelo just kind of didn't have a whole lot of respect for what he was doing. I think Smith's power, I thought Smith was his mindset was, once I hit Canelo with a couple good shots, he's going to just kind of lay back a little bit. And Canelo just didn't do that. I mean, he kept coming forward. He was very determined to impose his will. And I thought he imposed his will almost immediately in the fight within the first couple rounds.
Well, that comes down to a game plan. I thought Canelo had a tremendous game plan, and Smith really didn't have one. He was kind of just like, maybe I'll use my size, but he didn't really do that. He didn't get proper distance. He didn't shoot a jab. He didn't really give Canelo any reason to see any kind of opposing threat against himself, meaning Canelo. Like, there was no opposing threat towards Canelo from Smith. I do respect the fact that he got in a ring with such a great fighter that Canelo has become. It's easier said than done, and it's another thing to do it. And, for Smith, he's shown in the past that he's a very capable fighter. The World Boxing Super Series and all that great stuff that comes along with that. Is that the end of his road? I don't think so. I mean, he lost to what arguably is one of the best fighters on the planet right now in a lot of people's minds, in Canelo. And I got to say, man, Canelo showed a lot of versatility. And let's also recognize the fact that Canelo's went through a bunch of different weight classes over the years. And yes, there were some fights that were kind of close that he got the nod for. And Kev, we've documented this before. But this is a great win for him, and another notch underneath his belt, literally around his waist. And the thing about what Canelo's been doing is showing versatility. He doesn't always fight the same way, and adapting is one of his strong suits, and game plan. The people around Canelo are preparing him properly for these fights.
Yeah, so that's really interesting you say that, John. We actually have a comment from Matthew Conrad. Oh my goodness.
He puts the balls on the line. So therefore, we got to put some water on his balls. We got to pull that song up.
Is that a reference to Canelo putting his balls on the line, or I'm trying to really understand?
I think Matthew means that Canelo puts his balls on the line. You know,
word. Yeah, I mean he did. I mean I kind of had a feeling before the fight that I knew Canelo was going to win in my mind. I just had I wasn't sure if he was really going to be was like a natural 168, but I don't want to be too negative here. When I saw Canelo at that weigh-in, something about it actually. So, was there VADA testing for this fight? Just to kind of pull back there, was there any drug testing for this? I mean, Canelo looked amazing. I mean, I've seen him years ago, and he just did not look that ripped and cut up, and it's a little bit interesting,
I've seen Canelo look beefy before in the past, and I'm sure they did some kind of testing, whether it was USADA or VADA or whoever. At the end of the day, he did look ripped, but he did look bulked up in the past many times, stocky. For certain fights, I think they're again very good in their camps, where I think they condition his body to fit the bill, if you will, of how he's going to fight somebody. In this case, I think short and stocky and aggressive was the best tactic for Canelo, because Canelo backed that man up the entire time. And a lot of people were like, oh man, that the size differential here is crazy. I'm like, yeah, but Canelo knows how to get on the inside, and he was very aggressive in this fight and cutting the ring off brilliantly. So I think they suit his body for the fight. Now, we all know about the clenbuterol. We all know about certain things with Canelo.
That's kind of why I brought it up, because it wasn't a situation where he's been busted before, but mind you, I'm kind of of the opinion that I kind of did believe the thing with the clenbuterol, because there has been a history of Mexican athletes testing positive for clenbuterol, which is a steroid, I believe, that you get from eating tainted meat in Mexico. So, but at the same time, this is physique. I mean, compared to when he fought Mayweather, obviously that was years ago. He was much younger. He was fighting at a much lower weight, and actually was a catch weight. I think it was at 152 pounds. So obviously he wasn't going to look as muscled up and ripped. But I mean, his physique has dramatically changed in about the last 8 to 10 years. So I mean, obviously there's going to be some suspicion there. I definitely don't want to take away from his victory, obviously, because I mean, he looked tremendous. And it wasn't just the physique or the size or anything. It was what he was doing in there. I mean, he was what was very impressive was how he used his jab. He was able to close the gap and out jab the guy that you would expect that would have the better jab, the guy with the range who was tall. So it definitely was interesting to kind of see Canelo out jab a much bigger man.
Well, that's very interesting. And I noticed that right from the first or second round. And we talked about his body and his physique. He went through multiple weight classes. When you go through multiple weight classes, your body's going to change drastically. For him to facilitate himself in the fashion that he has, I don't want to say he's, I'm going to have him innocent until he's proven guilty again, because we know he popped twice for that clenbuterol stuff. But I got to give him props. I mean, it's not easy to do. And then we're talking about weight classes. I mean, the next move for Canelo, I mean, he could fight at 168, 160, 175. There's opponents in all those weight categories. Me personally, at this point for Canelo, hey, man, go to 175. Take on Better Biev. Take on Bivol. Give me Joe Smith. Give me Ramirez. I mean, there's a lot of fighters, Gilberto Ramirez, that would be electrifying, but I think the most likely scenario is that we get him still at 168. Maybe a Charlo brother moves up for the payday and hangs in there. Maybe Andrade goes up there. If we're talking 160, Caleb Plant has an assignment against Caleb Truax coming up. Triple G's always looming. I'm not really too pumped for that if it happens. Like I I'm sorry. At this time, I'm fan fatigued about it. David Benavidez at 160 would be a good fight. So, I mean, there are opponents for Canelo to face, and he's obviously going to be jumping around in weight.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to respond real quickly. We got Matthew Conrad. He's still in the chat.
What's up, Matt?
He says Godinez would have a field day here. I'm not sure what
Alex.
he's referring to.
Yeah, I know who he's talking to.
Okay.
That's my guy, brother. I wish he was here. He could join anytime. I know he was saying he was busy tonight and he wanted to come through. So shout out to Alex and his people and all my people that are following this. We put out a link last minute impromptu show that we decided to do. So hopefully you guys catch it on the replay and join us in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Matthew, for joining the chat. So
what's up, Matt?
Yeah, out of all those guys you named, I would love to see Canelo fight Benavidez. I mean, that would just be excellent fight. But obviously, as you know, not going to happen, not anytime soon. So
I don't think so. I
definitely see him fighting somebody like a Billy Joe Saunders, and I think Billy Joe Saunders is definitely a interesting style matchup because he's a southpaw and he's kind of tricky and kind of a 168-pound version of Erislandy Lara, but maybe without the athletic ability and the same type of movement, but definitely a style that probably will give him fits for a few rounds. So it should be definitely a interesting one to see.
Well, it goes back to planning, preparation, game plan, conditioning. Canelo and his people are obviously studying their opponents and getting their body in a position to train, I feel, in the proper way for their opponent. You know, it depends on where they go. I think in all likeliness, if Caleb Plant gets past his assignment coming up soon against Caleb Truapt, I think that's a fight that we'll potentially see. And I like Caleb Plant. He's a very good boxer and he's got a great story. He's well deserving. It's a good fight for diehards. I believe if you follow the sport, you know who Caleb Plant is. I think he's a great guy. And I think it would be a great opportunity, and we'll see what happens from there. But the one as a diehard, my fantasy matchmaking in me wants the 175 Canelo to return and take on some of these monsters.
Oh, Arthur Beterbiev is who you're referring to, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yep. And that's, crazy for me to even throw that out there. It's a very dangerous fight, but that's why I like it. But I think Canelo is trying to dare to be great. And Kev, in this year, we saw a lot of fighters dare to be great. I mean, this COVID year was crazy for sports, for casual life, for everything. Go to a restaurant, bar. It's all fucked up. I got to throw that out there. Yeah. But
just imagine if you were in California, you'd be under.
Oh man, right, exactly. But in this year, we got to see some great fights, and I gotta say, Kev, I want to talk about the fight of the year, in my opinion, which was Zepeda versus Baranchek.
Okay.
Man,
yeah,
I knew right away. I felt like I was watching Foreman versus Lyle. Everyone's getting dropped. Literally left and right. I think there was a total of 8 knockdowns recorded in this beast of a fight. I mean, it was just total balls to the walls. The momentum and everything swung back and forth, whether it was their hands or the rounds who won.
Right there, wow.
Everything you need to know right there in that shot. And that was just one of the greatest fights I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's no exaggeration. It's not because I was thirsty for some good boxing.
Yeah.
Good boxing came to me and quenched my thirst. Like, that's what happened. Yeah. I remember, I was telling my wife, dude, I was like, you got to Emmanuel Stewart style. You got to look at this. You got to see, oh my God. I was screaming. My neighbors must have thought I was losing my mind because I knew what the hell I was looking at. I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah. And just to say there, to cut you off there, not only was that fight of the year. That was my fight of the year. That was your fight of the year, and this was also my KO of the year. Let's check out the video.
No knockout yet because these two guys have a heart. Oh, big again! He bends the leg, and this fight is done. What a knockout from Jose Cepeda!
That was great.
Oh my goodness. Again, I sound like Emmanuel Stewart right now. Oh my gosh. When that happened, it was so explosive. And I don't know if our listeners remember what was happening. It was so back and forth. And it almost looked like, Baranchek was coming on a little bit.
Yeah. It was like
and
every
then
time one guy was kind of seemed to kind of take the play or get the edge. I mean, it was just so back and forth. It was like Castillo and Corrales, Jose Luis Castillo and Diego Corrales. The only difference, this fight was kind of compacted into about five or six rounds, and there were just so many knockdowns. It was almost like, just imagine if Chico Corrales and Jose Luis Castillo didn't have the iron chins that those guys have. That's kind of what we saw there. I mean, it was pretty amazing to watch. That was my KO of the year. What was your knockout of the year?
Povetkin White. That was something stellar. I always had a lot of respect for Dylan White, and what happened there was just like, wow, that shot was so impactful, and you knew it. Like, there's certain knockouts that happen in this game, Kevin, as we know, that you just know when it happens. When you could just see exactly someone, it's coming up on the screen right now, guys. You could see someone just laying there lifeless. Now, thankfully, he got back up, and he's still full of life to this day. But, man, Povetkin's KO of White was something else, especially when you consider the severity of heavyweight boxing and how hard these guys can hit, especially if they hit you clean. It doesn't get any dirtier in terms of like nastiness, in terms of knockouts than that. But it was a clean shot. It was amazing.
It wasn't a bad fight either. Just for the fact that I think the round before, it almost looked like Povetkin was gone. He was in dire straits, and that punch. It was actually in a way, compared to the other fight, the knockout was almost more dramatic in the sense that Povetkin wasn't really in the fight. I mean, the punch just came like out of nowhere, where he pretty much looked. I mean, White looked like he was just on his way to pretty much dominating and getting him out of there, and that's what we love about boxing. I mean, you make one little small mistake, you get a little bit overeager, and you can get caught, especially in the heavyweight division where guys are just pretty much. I mean, there's some light punchers in the heavyweight division, but pretty much any guy can knock out any fighter at any time. So, I mean,
there's no doubt. You hit the nail on the head. The heavyweight division, anything can happen at any point in time, and you're absolutely right. White was, giving it to Povetkin, and Povetkin we know is kind of like on the downside, but now this kind of brings him up on the upside of things and looking much better. To throw a shot out there like that, especially against, White could punch. He's got pop. So that took a lot of balls for Povetkin to play poker there a little bit and throw in his chips and go all in. And that's exactly what happened. And that shot put him back in heavyweight conversation, in which, Kev, I want to talk to you about a little bit later, things we could look forward to in 2021. But what I want to ask you is, who do you think was the fighter of the year in 2020?
Let me see. Fighter of the year. That's a pretty tough one, John. I'm a little bit on the fence, so I kind of have it. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. I kind of have a fighter of the year A, and I have a fighter of the year B, and pretty much before actually this weekend, the guy that I had was Teofimo Lopez. Clearly, I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of big fights this year, so he was a guy that stood out the most to me as far as having a big win against a pound for pound talent such as
Lomachenko.
Vasyl Lomachenko. And then this weekend, I mean, Canelo had such a dominant performance against Callum Smith that he can make a case for himself. The only reason why I'm giving it to Lopez is because Lopez was about a 3-1 underdog, and Canelo was a heavy favorite. So if you kind of balance it that way, but obviously Lopez and Lomachenko was a closer fight. Although obviously the scorecards, they had Lopez like so wide, but it was a more competitive fight, especially down the stretch. Canelo just basically he built on his lead the whole way, so he got better as the fight went on. So who do you feel was fighter of the year? I mean, I have Lopez as a fighter of the year, and Canelo slightly behind him.
I'm going to agree with Teofimo. His accomplishment against Lomachenko was excellent. Canelo, definitely right there. I'm going to have to agree with you on all accounts of what you said, especially being a superstar that Canelo is in this tough time and taking on a formidable opponent in Smith and still be willing to say that he wants to fight the best. So I got to give him props for that. And I'm going to sound a little corny right now. I think every fighter that stepped in the ring this year during this crazy year that we've had are all fighters of the year, whether they won or lost, whether they were names that we knew or we didn't know. I got to give him props, man. Boxing is not easy. Getting COVID tested is not easy. Dealing with all the stuff that they have to deal with, not having crowds and for a large part of some of these shows is not easy. Compromised pay is not easy. So I want to shout out every boxer or any athlete or any person that's working, doing their job, blue collared, out there, whether they're sitting behind a desk or whatever they're doing, construction working, whoever's out there. You're all my fighters of the year because this has been the craziest shit show year of all time. So anyone big up, I'm going to give you all cheers and happy holidays.
Yeah, it takes, especially considering boxing it's such a mental game. And I think this whole COVID-19 thing has affected a lot of people mentally, as far as, like there's people. And I know some people, some family members and people close to me that have actually contracted it. So obviously it's something that's very serious. It's something not to be ignored. So from a health standpoint and then also from a mental standpoint, I think a lot of these fighters have been affected. Just want to give a shout out to Matthew for being in the chat. He had to log off, but definitely want to thank him for joining us this evening. And
thank you, Matt.
So what else we going to be talking about? So fighter. So you had fighter of the year.
Teofimo, and I think he's well deserving of it. Huge accomplishment. Like you said, he was an underdog. He was fighting the popular consensus pound for pound fighter on a lot of people's, rankings and whatnot. In Lomachenko, I want to kind of foreshadow to 2021 things I'm looking forward to. We have a lot of good potential matchups. Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford. That would be a great matchup. I also think that Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua would be a tremendous matchup. The biggest fight, in my opinion, in UK history. And maybe, who knows, overall in boxing. I mean, do we have an attendance? Do we have a live gate? We don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. So I think that this year salvaged itself and put things in perspective a little bit better.
I think the end of 2020 ended pretty strong. I mean, we had some decent matchups. We had the Garcia and Errol Spence bout, which, obviously I wasn't going to pay like $80 for it, but it was still like it was great to see some fans in attendance, and I think that was a good thing about the Canelo and Smith fight. There were some fans there, so that was positive. I believe there was also fans at the Joshua Pulev fight. Was there?
Yes,
Fans
there was.
in
Yep.
attendance? How many fans were at that fight?
I think off the top of my head, I could be wrong. I think it was about 30 to 40% capacity. So, I mean, there was a good amount. It looked pretty full. You never know, Kev, because we live in Vegas, guys that are listening, and the bottom line is they say 25% capacity at some of these places. Bullshit. Like, you go to some places, it's crazy. There are people everywhere, so I think they probably allowed a little bit more than they let on to believe, but it looked great. It was aesthetically pleasing. It looked good for television. It was great to hear, the Sweet Caroline and the Brit fans, who I think are the greatest fans on the planet. They get so into their boxing and they're so passionate, and it really engages you. And for me, Kev, I'm going to be honest, like, my viewer experience watching boxing and sports in general in 2020, I didn't mind there not being a crowd, especially I've been in gyms, I've seen spars and whatnot. And I think it was kind of cool just to have it quiet. You hear the punches more, you hear the corner more. But when I saw the crowd come through and started listening to the cheers and chants, and I was like, okay, this is boxing. This is what is missing. And so we do need that enthusiasm. But I think overall the networks have been trying. I think everyone's been trying, sometimes good and sometimes not so good. The one I give the most props to is actually outside of boxing is Dana White for the UFC. He was actually guinea pigging this whole thing. He was the one that started to launch sports. He didn't give a shit. He was like, I'm going to run my shows. You're not going to stop me. I'm going to buy an island. I got people that are willing to work and fight. And everyone watched the whole sports world, whether you were an executive at marketing or a fighter yourself or a baseball player. Everyone had their eyes on the UFC, and they were successful with what they did. And once they had done that successfully, notice what happened. Other sports followed. So I give big ups and props to Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, golf, everything out there, NFL, all that stuff.
Somebody's got to take the lead, and then hopefully willingly people will follow. And
he was that guy,
and do the right thing at the same time. Obviously we don't want people to get sick or whatnot, but obviously you got to. I think in society you got to find balance. So so hopefully over time people will kind of figure out what is the correct way to move forward. And see what's best plan of action moving forward, and not just being living our lives in fear.
Yes, sir. Indeed. We're out there. Kev, you work, I work. And, I'm telling everyone, encouraging everyone to wash their hands and put a mask on and all that good stuff that goes along with it. But also you have to live your life. You can't live in fear. And that's why we love boxing, Kev, because these guys, they don't live in fear. If they lived in fear, they would never put a pair of gloves on. They would never step in the ring. It just wouldn't happen. But, to close things out, we're going to have a little bit of fun. I want to talk about boxing movies. Kev, I'm going to put you on the spot.
All right.
What's your favorite boxing movie of all time?
Favorite boxing movie? Let's see. I have a few. I mean, I love Raging Bull is one of my favorite boxing movies. Wow. I mean, Rocky, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Rocky 1, Rocky 2.
I was going to ask you, which one's better, 1 or 2? Because I'm a 2 fan. I love 1, but I thought 2 was fantastic.
I think probably number 2. I think I agree with you there. I think 2 because 2 kind of started out with part of number 1, and it drew you into the whole story, so it really worked kind of how they did it. And to me, it's almost like the Godfather 1 and 2. A lot of people like the first Godfather better, but I kind of like part 2 better.
I'm a 2 guy when it comes to Godfather. I'm a 2 guy, man, all the way.
Had the flashbacks and everything, so that was pretty great. Also, there's another movie called The Greatest, where Muhammad Ali basically plays himself. I mean,
great movie.
That was a great film. It's just I think boxing, as far as The Fighter, was a pretty good film also.
Excellent.
About Mickey Ward.
I have an honorable mention that's underrated. The Hurricane. That a lot of people. Yeah, that was great. Denzel Washington was fucking phenomenal in that movie.
You kind of put me on the spot, John, because I haven't really been thinking about any boxing films. So but I'm just gonna name ones off the top of my head. There's the one about Vinny Pazienza called "Bleed for This" was a pretty good film.
That wasn't bad at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And there's a couple movies that came out recently about Chuck Wepner.
Okay.
There's one I think called The Brawler, and I think Liv Schreiber plays Chuck Wepner. And there's another one I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's been some pretty significant boxing movies that have come out in the last few years. There's obviously $1 Million Baby that won all those Oscars.
Oh, wow. Tough one. Yeah, that's
definitely one to mention.
Oof. Yeah. Going back to Hurricane real quick, Ruben Hurricane Carter, I had the honor and privilege to meet. And I was in a room at a benefit that I was actually working at. And, in Philadelphia, I think it was for Katrina at the time. And Bernard Hopkins was there. A lot of great notable boxers and Joe Frazier. I mean, come on. That's enough said right there. And I noticed Ruben. I noticed Carter. I'm like, oh my God, that's the Hurricane. So I went up to him. Nobody noticed this man. And he was so generous. I went up to him. I said, "You're Ruben Hurricane Carter, aren't you?" He's like, "Yes, sir." He's like, "Thank you for noticing." I'm like, "All I ask, brother, is can I please take a picture with you?" And he was so awesome and so nice. He's like, "Absolutely." What a gentleman, man. And that movie, like you mentioned, Schreiber, who was also in that movie, I think it was tremendous because it tells a great story. And the acting, the performances, oh my goodness. As far as other boxing movies, we mentioned Rocky 1 and 2. Those are obvious. Rocky 4 was just a great action movie with the best soundtrack ever. You mentioned Godfather 2, which is not a boxing movie, but I tell you what, it's probably one of the greatest movies ever made. Yeah. My favorite of the whole saga, and probably my favorite over Goodfellas, Casino, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's been plenty. The Champ was a great boxing film. Yep. There was underground ones like Gladiator. I don't know if you remember that one from way back in the day, Cuba Gooding Jr. That was a good one.
There's another movie with Lou Gossett Jr. I don't know if you remember.
With John Voight. Yeah, John Voight.
Yeah,
yep.
That was a pretty good, very like low-key obscure movie, but if you've never heard of it, that's definitely one for people to kind of check out. I believe that was in the 80s, correct?
Yes, I think early 80s, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. Great movie, great recommendation there for sure. Cinderella Man is a great one for people that want to catch up over the holidays or during quarantine to watch some great boxing films. And I'm sure I've missed some.
What's funny, John, is you talk about Cinderella Man. That's one that I have not seen.
Holy shit!
I've not seen Cinderella Man, so that's definitely one that I gotta check out. I know the story, but I haven't actually seen the movie. It's kind of like what's the movie? I'm gonna go off topic here just real quick.
Go for it.
Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I've read the books, never seen the movies.
Cinderella Man is wonderfully directed and acted and just scripted. Everything about that movie. It might be one of the best boxing movies I've ever seen. Ali also is an honorable mention. Will Smith kicked ass in that movie. And one thing, like you mentioned The Fighter before, one thing I like about both those films, they're not Hollywood exaggerated when they do the fight choreography. We all know that I'm a big martial arts guy. I love watching like karate films and shit, and I'm always watching fight choreography in movies. Ali and that movie was so good, and the fighter was so good at depicting like the Foreman fight with the Ali, and then the Mickey Ward, when they closed him out in that film, like it holds up to almost how it really looked, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I think on another show moving forward, hopefully we get some more people in the chat in the future. Maybe we can kind of discuss that further and see what the fans think is the best boxing movies out there. And I think it'll be educational also, because I'm sure there's a lot of movies that.
Oh wait, I got one.
I haven't seen.
Great White Hype.
Oh yeah. I was about to bring that one up.
That movie is hysterical.
Yeah, it's hilarious. It's definitely like a good parody on everything. Yeah,
it takes boxing and it holds up to this day. And I was watching it recently, and I've watched this movie a million times. And dude, first of all, Samuel L. Jackson as the would-be Don King, tremendous. Everything about that movie to me is gold. It's so funny, it's so sarcastic, but it's real. If you've ever been, Kev, you've been behind the scenes in boxing, as well as many people I know, and myself included. They pretty much got it. they nailed it.
Yeah, they did, and it was to make a comedy about for parody's sake. I mean, it was pretty. They hit the nail on the head.
They did. Another one. Now I'm thinking about other ones. Play It to the Bone. That was a good one. I don't know if you ever saw that one before. It's really, really funny. Woody Harrelson is the lead, and Antonio Banderas as well. If you've never seen this one, it's a comedy. It's more of a dark comedy though. It's not as lighthearted as Great White Hype, but it's pretty damn good if you've never seen it. Well, Kev, we're gonna have a movie night.
Yeah. Definitely got to. I definitely got to check a couple of those ones out that I have not seen. Because for some reason, boxing movies always have been like legendary in Hollywood. They've always made just for great theater, and just the stories of like the people that actually get involved in the sport of boxing, their backgrounds and everything. It's definitely something that people cannot ignore, like the humanity that is involved in boxers. It's definitely it's captured in such a magical way in a lot of films.
I think that it definitely supersedes all of sport movies. Now, there have been great ones like Major League for baseball, Field of Dreams, all that kind of stuff.
Core of what human life is about and the struggles that we all have, and I think that's why they always do so well, and they definitely capture people's imagination.
It's a metaphor for life, Kev. It really is. Everyone's always fighting, especially now. And it just really puts you in a position to where you could identify with the characters. Everyone could identify with Rocky Balboa. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people can, that is fighting through life and trying to better themselves as a person, which I think we all should do. And Johnny over here now is getting all, sensitive and rah-rah and spiritual and all that. But I want to say this to everybody. Let's all keep fighting. Let's raise our glasses. Okay, continue to enjoy boxing and continue to enjoy safety and health. And, I'm going to say something in Italian here, Gendan, which means 100 years of happiness to not only you and yours. Salud.
Salud. We out of here, and we'll see you next time. Hopefully we see you in the chat. KO Nation Boxing. Thank you very much, everybody.
Unbelievable.
You want to throw sometime? Bang!
Oh, my God. Okay, sir.
Wait, let's stay live for a moment. I got to do this for certain people because they're going to be listening to it. We got to do the water on the balls song.
Okay,
Yeah. We gotta, because
All right.
I'll be taking some shit for this if we don't put it up there.
All right, here we go. This is water on the ball.
Music make you lose control. Music make you lose control.
Okay, Eric, deep breath now. Let me put some water on your balls. Okay, Eric, deep breath now. Let me put some water on your balls. Let me put some water on your balls. Let me put some water on your balls. Okay, Eric, deep breath now. Let me put some water on your balls. 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 Okay, Eric, deep breath now. Let me put some water on your balls. 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 Okay, Eric, deep breath now. Okay, Eric, deep breath now. Okay, Eric, deep breath now. Let me put some water on your balls. Let me put some water on your balls. Let me put some water on your balls.
Music make you lose control.
Let me put some water on your balls.